Welcome to my garage, where we will be comparing the OUPES Exodus 600 with the brand new OUPES Exodus 1200. A couple of years ago, we had a power outage, and it lasted for nearly 5 days, and I really wanted to get some backup power in our house. In addition, last year we kind of got into camping a little bit, and those two interests led me to begin looking at different power stations, different brands. And as I was doing my research, I stumbled onto this brand called OUPES. Now, OUPES is kind of on the lesser expensive side of things, but they had really good ratings, and a lot of people, really said good things about them. Plus, because they're less expensive, I was able to get into my OUPES Exodus 600 during a Black Friday sale for a very cheap price. One of the cool things about OUPES is they have a very active online community. In addition, on their Facebook platform, in their kind of Facebook group, they have an actual employee who will actually talk to you and answer questions. And so this very active group and this very helpful employee just really appealed to me, and I really became kind of a fan of their brand. I was very pleased with my Exodus 600, so whenever OUPES asked if anyone would be interested in testing out a new product, I of course volunteered. We had several conversations, and they very graciously sent me this Exodus 1200 to test out. And so let's take a look at how they compare on paper. So first off, the Exodus 1200 has a 1200 watt inverter, and the Exodus 600 has a 600 watt inverter. Now the 1200 comes with a 1500 watt boost mode. The 600 does not have that. The Exodus 1200 has 992 watt hours of battery power, and the 600 has 256 watt hours of battery power. The Exodus 1200 has more than 3 times the battery power and twice the inverter power. When you look at the boxes themselves, you see that the 600 has 2 AC outputs, only one with a ground, and 3 18 watt USB outputs, including 2 USB-A and 1 USB-C, and a 12 volt kind of car charger DC output. The 1200 has 3 20 amp outputs. You can see the different kind of plugs there, and has 4 USB outputs. The 2 USB-As are 18 watts, but the USB-Cs actually are up to 140 watts. And then of course you have the car charger and 2 5.5 millimeter DC outputs. A couple other major differences between these two obviously is weight. The 600 weighs 8.16 pounds, whereas the 1200, being much larger, weighs 23.15 pounds. Neither of those are super heavy weights, but it definitely is easier to carry the 600 around. And the other thing is that the OUPES 1200, the Exodus 1200, has app control. You get to use their Clean Energy app, whereas the OUPES Exodus 600 does not have that capability. Both of them take AC charging, both of them can take solar or DC charging, and we'll be testing some of that later on. But just in general, those are the main differences between the two boxes. So let's see how we would actually use them in the real world. A while back, I was given this powered Igloo cooler. It runs off a 12 volt DC, and frankly, I didn't even have a cable for it, so I finally found a cable that would work with it. And as you can see, it's basically a little portable refrigerator, but it's one of the kind that does not have the built-in compressor. It just has a fan that runs all the time. So I am interested in finding out how long each of these boxes would run it. Let's try the 600 first. Turn on the DC. Now on the front it says it's only going to run it for 2 hours. But if we take 256 watt hours and divide it by 65, it should run it for almost 4 hours. Now we're not gonna try all that and wait that long because I have other things I wanna test, but it is interesting to see how conservative the power estimates are on the front of these boxes. So let's see what the 1200 says. So once again, a little bit of a conservative estimate on the display. The 1200 with a 992 watt hour battery at 65 watts of power draw, which should be constant because this fan never turns off, should actually last around 15 hours to power this cooler just on one charge. Of course, the display says 12 hours. Again, not going to run through all 12 hours of that just to make sure that that's correct, but I think it's interesting. One, we see the power draw for both boxes, 65 watts. Either one of those would do great at a picnic, but if you were going to be camping and possibly want to keep something cool overnight, then of course the 1200 is probably going to serve you better than just a couple of hours of coolness with the 600. The Exodus line from OUPES is designed to be out and about, and I know that somebody's probably going to wonder, hey, I wonder if one of these little power boxes would power my power tools. So let's take a look at what the 600 and the 1200 would do with various tools that are electrically powered that you might have around the house. Let's start with the circular saw from Skill. It's 13 amps, 2.3 horsepower. To be honest, I have no idea what kind of power it actually draws. So let's see first if the 600 will even power it. But here we go, let's test it. All right, I just overloaded the 600. It was really ramping up. It didn't give me a good jolt at the beginning. I saw it reach about 500 watts before it went into the air. So let's go ahead and power that off. And now the 1200. And here we go. You notice that the fan kicked right on. I was steady at 1250, 1260 watts there. So definitely up into the 1500 boost mode. In the paperwork, it actually says that boost mode works well with motor-driven implements, just like a saw like this. So it was working really good. It didn't have to ramp up too much. It gave me a good amount of juice right off the beginning, as opposed to the 600, which obviously just couldn't do the job. All right, first off, let's try the 600. Besides scattering dust everywhere, looks like it was running around 140 watts. No problem for the 600. And again, of course, for the 1200, I'm certain the results will be the same. Let's give it a shot. Looked like a spike of up to about 160 watts and then settled down around 140. Sander got my stuff all dirty. This is one of those oscillating blades. It's a really cheap version that came from Harbor Freight. Let's go ahead and get the power on, and we'll see if the 600 can do it. 600 can definitely do it. I saw a spike up around 200 watts, and then it settled down into the 140, 150 range. So the 600 can definitely do it. Obviously, the 1200 will be able to do it as well. Let's just go ahead and prove that to make sure. Again, about 140 watts there. Here is a cheap 5 amp angle grinder that I got from Harbor Freight. And I'm gonna go ahead and start it out on the 1200 first, just because I think it is gonna pull a little bit more power. Let's see. All right, the fan definitely kicked on there. After the initial kick of maybe 350, 360 watts, it dropped back there a little bit closer to 300. So let's see if the 600 can perform as well. Here we go. All right, looks like it was gonna make that work for at least the next 38, 40 minutes or so. Definitely can handle a 300 watt angle grinder. What about a reciprocating saw? Again, a Chicago Electric from Harbor Freight, because they sometimes have cheap tools if you don't need to do very much with them. So let's see how it goes. The Exodus 600. So I saw a spike of over 400 watts used, and then it dropped back to a little over 200. So let me see how the 1200 handles it. Power kicks on for just a second, and here we go. That spike didn't seem quite as high. It went up to 380 or so, and then dropped back down to a little over 300. Now I know what you're thinking. What if I'm not at the job site, but I'm at the campsite? What if I just want to charge some everyday electronics like my phones, portable game systems, iPads, computers, that kind of thing? Well, let's see how each one of these boxes does in those situations. Here we have a selection of various portable electronics. Either one of these boxes would do great at the campsite. If you're only going to charge small electronics like this is a situation where I think the 600 would probably outperform the 1200 if for no other reason than it weighs a third of what the 1200 does. At 8 pounds versus almost 24 pounds, you don't have to haul the larger box to get the same amount of charging capability out of these boxes. And I think that the battery power here in a fully charged one would be more than enough to power and charge up all of these devices. Now I know what you're thinking. Scott, when I go camping, I take a small camper, or I want to do something more than just charge small electronics. Maybe I want to heat up a cup of water for a glass of tea in the morning and I don't feel like starting a fire. Will the Exodus 600 run a microwave? Will the Exodus 1200 run a microwave? Well, I don't know if you've been shopping for low power microwaves lately, but the smallest one I could find is a 700 watt microwave. If I heat up this water inside this microwave, when I turn this on, I'm fairly certain that this 600 watt maximum power station is going to shut down because of the 700 watt pull that this microwave is going to do. So let's give it a try. 650, 700, 700 watts, and shut down. So there you go. It definitely can't handle that kind of power. But what about the 1200? This should be no hard task for the 1200 here. So let's get it going. All right, here we go. So there goes the microwave. Wow, it is jumping up to 1200 watts, not 700 watts, which is what it's rated at, but it's actually pulling more than 1200 watts from the Exodus 1200. I'm at 1225, so I'm up into boost mode to get this microwave to run. That is crazy. This is a rated 700 watt power microwave, but it's pulling more than 1200 watts. So there's no way that the Exodus 600 was going to be able to do that. But the Exodus 1200 is handling it like a champ. A piece of information that's kind of handy to have is that 700 watts of cooking power is not the same thing as 700 watts of electrical draw. What about a small space heater? Now this ceramic heater is actually rated for 1500 watts, but on low power, it'll only pull about 650 watts. If I can turn on the power and get it onto the low mode before it really starts pulling too much juice, will the Exodus 600 work? Let's find out. All right, that's low. 584 watts, 620 watts, 650. So it's going to settle around 650. I'm at 680 watts right now, and it overloaded. So the Exodus 600 cannot, even on low power, push itself beyond its rated wattage of 600. So that's not really a huge surprise, but I wanted to test it anyway. What about the 1200? Now I know that the 1200 will run this heater on low, no problem. So again, 900 watts of a spike, 800, and it's starting to drop back. It's going to settle out around 650. Technically, this is supposed to have a 1500 watt boost mode, but I suspect that this heater actually draws more than 1500 watts. So let's see what happens whenever I try to switch it into high. In high, I'm at still at only 750. I'm on high and it just shut down. So it must have spiked up over 1500. What this tells you is, of course, obviously, the 600 watt Exodus 600 isn't going to run a 1500 watt electric heater. The 1200 watt Exodus 1200 will run on low a 1500 watt ceramic heater because it's only pulling 650, 700 watts. Even when it spikes up to 800 or 900, it's well within its capabilities. But even on high, whenever it's at 1500 plus watts on a spike, that's far beyond the burst mode, boost mode that the Exodus 1200 boasts. You may have noticed these little LED lights that I had sitting on the table. Sometimes people complain about the OUPES brand and how there's no built-in light. An easy fix for that is these little USB powered LED lights. You can get them off Amazon for just a few dollars. There are many different kinds out there. You can literally just insert them and power on the DC, and it will give you a little bit of a light if you need to whenever you're walking around. You can obviously put as many as you want. There's different kinds of them, some brighter than others. These use less than a watt of power. So kind of handy to have. Just wanted to show you something fun that I got with my 600, and of course we'll be using again with the 1200. So I shoot a lot of videos, and one of the things that I have to do when I'm on location is charge batteries, lights, microphones. And a box like the OUPES 1200 or 600 would be great for that, obviously. And so you can charge a lot of things. One thing you should notice though, even with all of these things sitting here charging and flashing, they're just not pulling very much power. It looks like we're pulling about 5 watts of power. A couple of years ago, I was on a larger documentary project, and everything was kind of what they call run and gun. It was like there was not a lot of setup. I would just move into a space, shoot something that was happening right there, and then as soon as that was over, then I would move out of that space, and I had to be out very quickly. I had to be in very quickly. I couldn't set up a lot of gear, so I could only carry really just a limited amount of stuff with me. So by the time I had my case here with its wheels all set up, I was kind of already loaded down with as much as I could carry, but I did need a place to charge all of my batteries. However, I wasn't going to be able to haul a 24-pound, somewhat larger footprint power station like this in. I didn't have either one of these. If I had, or if I'd had both of them, I would have chosen the OUPES 600 to carry with me because it's lighter, it's smaller, and it still charges everything I needed to charge in the timeliness that I needed it to be done. So the 600 is lighter, faster to charge, and it's great for a lot of different things. And it's an excellent and inexpensive way to get a solar generator and portable power station. The 1200 is just more capable. It has more features, has more power, and it can do more with more power-hungry devices. So which should you choose? Well, that depends on what you want to use it for. And if you can't decide, you should just get both.